The wind blew dust across the broken colony streets when Ethan saw her for the first time. She stood near the edge of the old scrapyard like a lost shadow. Thin, pale, covered in dirt, her silver hair tangled with bits of wire and ash. Her empty blue eyes stared at nothing. She wasn't looking at the world. She couldn't. The girl held a metal pipe like a walking stick, tapping the ground before every slow step. The colony was no place for the weak. Scavengers, traders, and mercenaries passed through every day, eyes sharp for anything to steal. Yet here she was, alone, blind, moving carefully through a world full of danger. Ethan was fixing a broken water pump when he saw two men across the street whispering and pointing at her. He knew what kind of men they were. He had seen the same look before, a look that meant trouble for anyone who couldn't fight back. He dropped his tools and walked quickly toward the girl. "You lost?" he asked. The girl froze, clutching the pipe tighter. Who are you?" she asked softly, her head turning toward the sound but her gaze still empty. "Just someone trying to help," Ethan said. She bit her lip, hesitant. "The shelter," she whispered. "Is it near?" Ethan glanced at the far corner of the colony where the so-called shelter was. A loud, filthy place full of desperate people. A blind girl wouldn't last an hour there. "Too dangerous," Ethan said after a pause. "You can stay at my workshop. Safer there." She stood silent for a long moment before nodding. Ethan lived on the edge of the colony, where the desert began. His workshop was a mess of wires, old engines, and metal scraps stacked to the ceiling. People in the colony called him the Tinkerer because he could fix anything: water filters, old farming bots, even weapons. But mostly he built things no one asked for. The girl sat quietly while Ethan brought her water and food. She ate like someone who hadn't eaten in days. Small bites, careful, as though she didn't trust that it was real. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. "Lyra," she said softly. "I'm Ethan," he replied. She nodded slightly but didn't speak again. Her hands rested on her knees, thin and trembling. After a long time, she whispered, "I wasn't born blind. I saw once. Colors, trees, my father's face. Then the war came. Bright light, fire, and nothing." Her fingers touched her empty eyes like she still couldn't believe the darkness was forever. Something twisted inside Ethan's chest. He had seen the war take many things: homes, families, entire cities, but stealing sight from a child? That felt cruel even for this galaxy. That night, when Lyra finally slept on a small bed in the corner, Ethan sat at his work table staring at an old sketch he had once drawn. Years ago, he had designed a device, a visor that could bypass damaged eyes and send images straight to the brain. He had given up on it because no one believed in his inventions. Now he looked at the blind girl sleeping in his workshop, and he picked up his tools again. For hours, the sound of welding sparks and humming circuits filled the room. Ethan worked like a man possessed. He tore apart old drones for processors, pulled lenses from broken scopes, and soldered wires with shaking hands. By morning, a strange, uneven visor sat on the table. It wasn't pretty. It looked like scrap metal held together by luck. But it might work. When Lyra woke up, Ethan handed her the visor carefully. "I made this for you," he said. She touched it like it was made of glass. What does it do?" "Maybe," Ethan said slowly, "maybe it can help you see again." Lyra's breath caught. Her lips trembled. "Is that possible?" "Let's find out," Ethan said. The visor was cold as he placed it over her eyes. Lights blinked faintly on the side. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Lyra gasped. "Light," she whispered. "I see light." Ethan quickly adjusted the settings. The blurry light sharpened into shapes, then into color. Her hands flew to her mouth. "The sky," she said, voice breaking. "The sky, it's blue." She turned toward him, tears sliding down her face. You have brown hair. You made me see again." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He had built machines all his life, but this was the first time he felt like he had built hope. But far above, beyond the clouds, a small black drone hovered silently. Its single red eye locked on the visor's signal, recording every detail. It sent a pulse of data across the stars. Somewhere, 4 elite soldiers received the message, and they began their journey toward the colony. The next 4 days passed in a strange mix of peace and wonder. Lyra spent hours looking at the world like she had been born again. She stared at the sky until her neck hurt. She watched the market crowds, the desert winds kicking up dust, even the stray dogs fighting over scraps. Everything was new to her. Sometimes she laughed softly to herself as if the colors of the world were telling her secrets. Ethan fixed water pumps for the colony in the mornings, but his eyes often went to Lyra. He saw how she touched flowers like they were treasures or looked at the stars at night with silent awe. It made all the sleepless nights of building that visor worth it. But in the back of his mind, Ethan kept remembering the small black drone he had seen flying away the night Lyra first used the visor. He told himself it was probably nothing, just an old Empire survey machine passing by. He was wrong. It happened on the 4th day. The sky cracked open with the roar of engines. For sleek ships descended from the clouds, black and silver with glowing blue engines. They moved with military precision, circling the colony before landing in the open square. The whole colony froze. Traders stopped shouting. Kids ran indoors. Men slammed doors shut. The air filled with the heavy silence of fear. From the ships stepped 4 soldiers wearing dark exosuits marked with the crest of the Empire, 4 jagged stars surrounding a burning sun. Their armor gleamed like polished stone. Each carried a rifle that hummed with power. Their helmets hid their faces completely, only narrow red visors glowing where eyes should be. The people of the colony knew what this meant. When the Empire sent soldiers like these, it was never for anything good. The leader stepped forward, tall and broad, his voice like cold iron when he spoke. "We are looking for a device," he said. "A visor built with forbidden technology. It was activated here." No one answered. The soldiers' heads turned slowly, scanning the silent crowd. "Bring us the inventor," the leader said again, louder this time, "or we search every home, and we do not ask twice." Inside his workshop, Ethan heard the voice through the open window. His stomach turned to ice. Lyra sat near the door, holding the visor in her hands. Her eyes went wide when she realized who had come. "It's them," she whispered, her voice shaking. "The Empire. They found us." Ethan grabbed a bag and began stuffing tools and supplies into it. "We have to go," he said quickly. But Lyra didn't move. She just stared at the floor. "They're not here for the visor," she said softly. "They're here for me." Ethan froze. "What are you talking about?" Her voice cracked. "My father, he was a rebel leader. The Empire killed him. I'm the last one left. They've been hunting me for years." Ethan looked at her in shock. The pieces fell into place. The drone, the soldiers, the urgency in their voices. Giving her sight again. It had sent out a signal. And now the Empire knew exactly where she was. Outside, the leader gave the order. "Search every building. Anyone who hides the device or the girl will answer to the Empire." 2 soldiers moved toward Ethan's workshop. Inside, Lyra clutched the visor to her chest. "I shouldn't have stayed," she said, trembling. "I should have kept running." Ethan grabbed her arm firmly. "No, you're not going anywhere alone. I'll get you out of here." "You don't understand," Lyra said, her voice rising. "They will kill anyone who helps me." Ethan checked the small defense drone he kept on his work table. It wasn't built for war, but it could buy them time. Maybe. "Let them come," he muttered, powering it on. The first soldier stepped into the workshop, rifle raised. Ethan pressed a button. The defense drone dropped from the ceiling with a hiss, firing a flashbang straight into the soldier's visor. Light exploded. The soldier stumbled backward as sparks showered the floor. The second soldier opened fire, plasma bolts tearing through the walls. Ethan pulled Lyra into the back room as metal screamed and cracked around them. "Go, go!" Ethan shouted. He kicked open a hatch in the floor leading to the old mining tunnels beneath the colony. He had dug them years ago for smuggling scrap parts. They climbed down as the first soldier recovered, red visor glowing like an angry star. Above them, The leader's voice echoed through the square. "Run all you want, human," he called out. "The Empire always finishes its hunt." Ethan and Lyra disappeared into the dark tunnels as the soldiers began tearing the colony apart. The tunnels were dark, cold, and smelled of rust. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing through the empty passages as Ethan pulled Lyra along. His small flashlight cut through the shadows, throwing long shapes on the cracked walls. Above them, the sound of boots pounded through the colony. Shouts, orders, the metallic crash of doors being kicked open. It all echoed faintly through the ground. Ethan's mind raced. He had expected trouble when he built the visor. Maybe thieves. Maybe jealous traitors. But Imperial soldiers? Elite hunters? That was another level. And now this girl, this blind girl he had saved, was saying the Empire wanted her dead. He needed answers. They reached a small chamber in the tunnels where Ethan kept old mining tools. He locked the metal door behind them. For now it was safe. Lyra sat on a broken crate, clutching the visor to her chest like it was a piece of her soul. Her face was pale. Her eyes, those bright new eyes, kept darting toward the ceiling like she could still hear the soldiers hunting above. "Talk," Ethan said finally. "What are they after? The visor? Or you?" Lyra hesitated. Her lips trembled like the words were heavy inside her. "They want me," she whispered. "The visor only gave them my location. But they've been looking for me for years." "Why?" Ethan asked, keeping his voice calm though his stomach felt tight. Lyra took a slow breath. "My father's name was Kalen. Do you know it?" Ethan frowned. The name was familiar. Kalen, the rebel general. The man who fought the Empire across 3 systems before they finally crushed his forces 10 years ago. The man the Empire called the Butcher, and the rebels called the Lion. "They killed him," Lyra said softly. Her voice cracked a little, but she didn't cry. "Burned his ships. Hunted his soldiers. They thought they killed me too. And you've been hiding since then," Ethan guessed. She nodded. "Moving from world to world. Never staying long. If they catch me, they'll make an example out of me. To erase his name forever." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. This was worse than he imagined. He hadn't just saved a blind girl. He had saved the most wanted child in the sector. And the Empire would kill anyone who stood in their way. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Lyra looked at him with wide, scared eyes. "Would you have helped me if you knew?" Ethan wanted to answer quickly, to say yes, but the truth was heavy. Helping her meant warships, soldiers, and death following close behind. He stayed silent. Above them, a dull boom shook dust from the ceiling. The soldiers were using explosives now, searching house by house. It wouldn't be long before they found the tunnel entrance. Lyra gripped the visor tighter. "We can't stay," she said urgently. "They'll track the visor again. It sends off energy signals every time I use it." Ethan stared at the strange device he had built. Scrap metal, old circuits, and somehow it had brought the Empire down on them like wolves on a scent. But why? Then Lyra added quietly, "The visor looks like my father's tech. He used to build things like this for his soldiers. Weapons, shields, even warships. When you turned it on, maybe they thought he was alive again." Ethan swore under his breath. He had spent his life fixing water pumps and scrap engines. And now the Empire thought he was some kind of rebel scientist? Another explosion shook the tunnels. Closer this time. "They're coming," Lyra whispered. Ethan grabbed his pack. "There's a way out through the eastern tunnel," he said. "It leads to the wastelands. If we reach the old spaceport, maybe we can find a ship." Lyra stood, clutching the visor like a lifeline. "They won't stop," she said softly. "Even if we escape today, they'll keep coming." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. A thin girl carrying the shadow of a dead rebel leader on her shoulders. He hadn't asked for this. He just wanted to help someone see again. But now, there was no turning back. As they moved through the tunnels, Ethan thought about the stories he had heard as a boy, about Kalen's secret weapons, about a rebel fleet that vanished before the final battle. Some said Kalen had hidden things across the stars before he died. Looking at the visor in Lyra's hands, Ethan wondered if one of those secrets had just been awakened. They reached the tunnel exit just as the sound of metal boots echoed behind them. The soldiers had found the entrance. Ethan and Lyra slipped out into the burning sunlight of the wastelands. Endless dunes stretched before them. The wind carried the smell of dust and storms. Behind them, the Empire's hunt was closing in. And somewhere deep in Lyra's frightened eyes, a faint spark of anger was growing. The sun over the wastelands was cruel. It burned the sand into glassy heat waves and turned the wind into a whip of dust. Ethan and Lyra stumbled out of the tunnels, coughing as the air hit them like fire. Behind them, the echo of boots grew louder. The soldiers had found the tunnels. Ethan scanned the endless desert ahead, dunes stretching forever, broken only by the black bones of old war machines half buried in the sand. Far on the horizon stood the outline of the abandoned spaceport, its towers leaning like dead trees. "That's where we're going," Ethan said, pointing. Lyra nodded but didn't speak. She clutched the visor in both hands, her new eyes scanning the wasteland with fear. The Empire would not stop now. They ran, sand crunching under their boots, the sun turning their shadows long across the dunes. Behind them, the first ship roared out of the colony, engines blazing. It flew low, sweeping the desert with red scanning beams. Ethan swore under his breath. "They have flyers," he said. "We can't outrun them." Lyra's voice shook. "Then what do we do?" Ethan pulled a small device from his pack, a round, dented thing with wires sticking out. "Old EMP grenade," he said. "Might fry their scanners if we time it right." They hid behind a half-buried war tank as the ship passed overhead. Ethan waited, heart pounding, then threw the device. It exploded in a flash of blue light. The ship's engines coughed, sputtered, then went dark. It spun wildly before crashing into the dunes, smoke rising into the sky. But there were 3 more ships behind it. The chase across the wasteland turned desperate. Every few minutes, Ethan and Lyra ducked behind wreckage while ships scanned the sands. Soldiers on hoverbikes followed the scanners, leaving trails of fire across the dunes. Ethan used every trick he knew: homemade smoke bombs, fake heat signals, even old mines buried from the last war. But the soldiers kept coming. Lyra said nothing most of the time. She ran beside him, breathing hard, her thin frame trembling from exhaustion. But her eyes, her new eyes, never stopped watching the skies. "They won't stop," she said finally. "You can't fight the Empire." "Maybe not," Ethan said, pulling her behind a broken engine as a ship passed overhead. "But I can keep you alive." By late afternoon, the abandoned spaceport loomed ahead. Its walls were cracked, its landing pads covered in sand. Dead ships lay scattered like skeletons of giants. "This place gives me a bad feeling," Lyra whispered. "It's our only chance," Ethan said. "Old records say there are still fuel cells here. Maybe even a working ship." They slipped inside through a broken gate. The halls smelled of rust and dust. But before they could search, the ground shook. Outside, the Empire's ships were landing. Ethan cursed under his breath. They didn't have time. He pulled Lyra into an old control tower. From the window, they saw soldiers spreading across the ruins, scanning every corner. The leader's voice boomed through a speaker. "Give up the girl, human. We only want her. Leave her, and you walk away alive." Lyra froze. Her hands tightened around the visor. Ethan looked at her. "He's lying," he said. "They'll kill us both." Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. "You don't even know me. Why are you risking your life?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Maybe he didn't know himself. Maybe because she was alone, hunted, broken, and he was tired of watching the Empire crush everything good in the galaxy. "Because someone has to," he said finally. The soldiers moved closer. Ethan checked his pack, 2 EMP grenades left, some smoke bombs, and a small pistol with 5 shots. Against trained Imperial hunters, it was nothing. He set traps quickly. Tripwire mines at the doors, grenades hidden under debris. Then he turned to Lyra. "If they catch me," he said, "you run. Find a ship. Don't stop." Lyra shook her head violently. "No. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice, Ethan said. The first soldier stepped into the tower. Ethan pressed the detonator. A blinding flash rocked the building as traps exploded. Sand and smoke filled the air. Soldiers shouted, weapons firing in all directions. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand. Now! They ran through the chaos toward the main hangar. But the leader wasn't fooled. From the top of his ship, his red visor locked on them. He raised his rifle slowly, calmly, like a man certain of victory. You can run, human, he said over the speaker, his voice cold as ice. But the Empire always finds what it hunts. The hangar doors loomed ahead like the mouth of a waiting beast. And deep inside, something old, something powerful hummed faintly in the shadows. The hangar was a tomb of metal and dust. Ethan and Lyra slipped inside through a half-broken door, their footsteps echoing on the cracked floor. Dead ships lay scattered like fallen beasts, their wings torn, engines silent, cockpits shattered by time and sandstorms. But one thing caught Ethan's eye, a huge, half-buried warship in the center. Its dark metal hull was scarred by old battles, yet faint blue lights still glowed along its sides, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Lyra stopped, staring at it. "What is that?" she whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He didn't know. But the ship looked alive somehow, as if it had been waiting. Outside, the Empire soldiers spread across the spaceport like a net tightening around them. Their leader's voice came again over the speakers, cold and certain. "Human, give us the girl and we will spare you." Lyra flinched. Ethan ignored the voice. He kept looking at the half-buried warship. There was something about it, something important. The two of them climbed onto the ship's cracked hull, slipping through a gap into the control deck. Dust covered everything. Old screens flickered weakly as if waking from a long sleep. Ethan brushed dirt off the main console. Strange symbols glowed faintly under his hands. "This isn't Imperial tech," he muttered. Lyra looked around, eyes wide. "I've seen this before," she said softly. "In my father's base. His secret projects. His hidden fleet." Ethan froze. "This is Kalen's ship?" She nodded slowly. "He said one day it would rise again." Before Ethan could reply, a plasma bolt tore through the air outside. The soldiers had reached the hangar doors. "We don't have time," Ethan said, running his fingers over the console. "How do we start this thing?" Lyra stepped closer to the controls. Her father had taught her a few codes when she was a child, just in case. Her small hands trembled as she pressed the symbols. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the floor vibrated under their feet. The ship's lights flared bright. Deep inside the hull, engines coughed like waking giants. Outside, the soldiers stopped moving for a second. Even the leader turned his head toward the growing hum of power. "What is that?" one soldier muttered. The leader's visor glowed red. "Old rebel tech," he said coldly. "Destroy it." But the ship wasn't going to die quietly. Its engines roared to life, sending a shockwave across the hangar. Sand and debris flew everywhere. Old crates toppled like toys. Ethan grabbed Lyra as the deck shook under them. "You did it!" he shouted over the noise. The hangar doors blew open from the ship's power surge. Soldiers fired plasma bolts, but the shots bounced off the ship's awakening shields. For the first time, the hunters looked uncertain. The leader raised his weapon again, aiming at the control deck where Ethan and Lyra stood. "Take the girl alive," he shouted. But before they could fire, the ship responded on its own. Turrets unfolded from its sides like angry wings. Blue energy cannons lit up the dark hangar. With a scream of power, the ship fired. Bolts of pure light tore through the soldiers' lines. Metal screamed. Engines exploded. Soldiers scattered like insects before a storm. Ethan and Lyra stared as the ancient warship fought like a living thing, defending itself after years of silence. "Your father built this?" Ethan shouted over the chaos. Lyra nodded, eyes wide. "He said, one day it would protect me." The ship's guns tore through the last of the soldiers near the hangar doors. The leader barely escaped, leaping behind a burning engine. His visor glowed through the smoke, furious but not afraid. He raised a communicator to his helmet. "Call the fleet," he ordered coldly. "We need reinforcements." Inside the control deck, Ethan helped Lyra into the captain's chair. The console lit up around her, symbols shifting under her fingers like they recognized her. "Can you fly this thing?" Ethan asked. I think so," she said, her voice shaking. "It feels like it knows me." The ship's engines roared louder, dust flying in all directions as its systems came alive one by one. Outside, the surviving soldiers regrouped, weapons ready. But the ancient warship turned its guns toward them again, glowing like a beast awakened from a long sleep. "Let's get out of here," Ethan said. Lyra nodded and pressed the launch command. With a thunderous roar, the ship lifted off the ground, engines blazing. Sandstorms swirled around it as it rose into the sky like a dark phoenix. The leader watched from below, his visor reflecting the fire of the rising warship. "This isn't over," he growled. High above the wastelands, the warship broke through the clouds, engines burning bright. Ethan looked at Lyra. "Where do we go now?" She stared out at the endless sky, her father's ship under her hands, and said softly, "Somewhere the Empire can't follow." But in the shadows of space, the Empire was already moving. And the real hunt was just beginning. The rebel warship cut through the clouds like a blade of fire. Inside, the control deck glowed with strange lights as systems slowly came back to life after years of silence. Ethan sat near the weapons console, wiping sweat from his face, while Lyra stood at the main controls, her small hands shaking slightly on the panels. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The Engine's roar filled the air, and the stars ahead stretched into endless darkness. Finally, Ethan said, "We made it." But deep inside, he knew it wasn't true. The Empire never gave up this easily. Down below, in the burning remains of the spaceport, the leader of the soldiers stood with his helmet cracked and smoke curling off his armor. He watched the warship vanish into the clouds, his red visor flickering like a dying flame. "Contact the fleet," he ordered coldly. "Tell them we found Kalen's ship and the girl." High above, hidden among the stars, the Empire's nearest cruiser received the message. Orders were given. Engines lit up. The hunt had only just begun. Back on the warship, Ethan looked at the strange glowing symbols on the screen. "Can this thing even fly across space?" he asked. Lyra nodded slowly. "My father built it for war. It can outrun anything, maybe even fight back." Ethan glanced at her. "Can you fight back?" Lyra didn't answer. She was staring at her reflection on the console, her young face lit by blue lights. "I don't want to run forever," she said softly. "I'm tired of hiding." Those words stayed in the air like smoke. The ship's sensors beeped sharply. Ethan leaned forward. "What is that?" Lyra checked the readings. Her eyes went wide. Empire ships. 3 of them. Fast. On the screen, 3 red dots closed in quickly from behind. "They're not going to let us go," Ethan said. The ancient warship hummed under their feet as if it had heard the threat itself. Weapons systems lit up one by one. Energy flowed through the old cannons. The shields glowed faintly around the hull. For the first time, Ethan realized the ship wasn't just a machine. It felt alive, like it remembered the wars it had fought before. The first Empire ship appeared out of the clouds, engines burning red. It opened fire immediately, plasma bolts streaking toward them. The warship's shields flared bright blue as the blasts hit. Lyra gripped the controls tighter. "They're trying to push us toward the mountains," Ethan said, watching the enemy ships spread out in a deadly triangle. "They want to trap us." Lyra took a deep breath. Not this time. She touched a panel her father once showed her long ago. The warship moved like it had woken from a dream of war. Its main cannons turned toward the lead Empire ship. With a thunderous roar, they fired a beam of blue light that tore through the sky. The Empire ship tried to dodge, but too late. The beam sliced through its engines. Flames erupted as the ship spun downward, vanishing into the clouds below. The other 2 enemy ships broke formation, circling carefully now. Ethan stared out the window in shock. "This thing fights like a monster," he said. Lyra's hands moved faster across the controls now. It was like the ship listened only to her. Maybe it did. Another enemy ship launched missiles. The warship spun sharply, the missiles streaking past and exploding harmlessly in the distance. Then the warship's side turrets opened fire. Plasma bolts lit the sky, tearing into the second ship until it burst into flames. The third ship fled into the clouds. For the first time, silence returned to the skies. Ethan let out a long breath. "They'll be back," he said. "With more." Lyra looked down at the glowing panels under her hands. "Then we find somewhere safe," she said softly. But before she could speak again, the sensors beeped louder. On the screen, 10 red dots appeared at the edge of space. Bigger, faster, stronger ships. The Empire's fleet was coming. Ethan felt his stomach twist. "We can't fight all of them." Lyra's eyes burned with a strange light. "My father once told me, this ship has one last secret." She pressed a hidden panel on the console. A section of the controls slid open, revealing an old key slot glowing faintly blue. "What is that?" Ethan asked. "The heart of the lion," Lyra whispered. "He said it would wake the ship's full power, but only if I was ready to fight, not run." Outside, the stars lit up with the arrival of the Imperial fleet. Warships spread across the darkness like predators circling prey. Inside, Lyra's fingers hovered over the key slot, trembling. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked quietly. She took a slow breath. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Then she pressed the key in. The entire ship shuddered as lights flared bright enough to blind. And deep inside its core, something older than the Empire began to wake. The key slid into the slot with a deep metallic click. For a moment, nothing happened. The warship hung silently in the dark sky, surrounded by the Empire's fleet. Dozens of enemy ships aimed their weapons at the lone rebel vessel. Plasma cannons glowed, missiles locked on, red lights blinking like angry eyes. Then the warship's core came alive. A deep hum rose from its heart, growing louder until the entire hull shook. Blue lights raced along its wings, spreading like rivers of lightning. The air inside the control deck vibrated with energy as ancient systems woke up after years of silence. Lyra stood at the controls, her eyes wide. "It's listening to me," she whispered. Ethan held the weapons console, staring as power readings climbed higher and higher. "What did your father put in this thing?" he asked. "My father called it the lion's heart," Lyra said softly. "He said, when the time came, it would roar one last time." Outside, the Empire fleet moved closer, confident, circling like wolves around prey. The fleet commander's voice boomed through the speakers. "Rebel vessel, shut down your engines. Surrender the girl or be destroyed." Lyra didn't answer. The ancient warship's lights blazed brighter, glowing like a small sun. The first Imperial ship opened fire. Beams of red plasma shot across the sky, smashing against the warship's shields. But the shields didn't break this time. They pulsed once, then absorbed the energy like water swallowing fire. On the control deck, Lyra's hands moved over the panels instinctively, as if the ship itself guided her. Ethan braced himself. "They're coming in from all sides." Lyra pressed the final command. The warship roared, not with sound but with power. Blue light exploded outward in a wave so bright the stars seemed to vanish. The Empire ships closest to the blast were thrown back like toys in a storm. Their shields cracked, engines burned out, and 3 ships spiraled into the darkness, flames trailing behind them. Ethan stared in disbelief. That was just one strike? The ship wasn't done. Turrets unfolded from its sides, massive cannons glowing like the eyes of some ancient beast. Lyra gripped the controls, feeling the ship's energy racing through her fingertips. She didn't just see the fleet outside, she felt it. Every enemy ship, every missile lock, every movement appeared in her mind like pieces on a game board. The warship moved faster than it should have, spinning through the fleet like a predator among startled prey. Its cannons fired in all directions, tearing Imperial ships apart with each shot. Ethan manned the secondary weapons, firing bursts at smaller fighters trying to flank them. Explosions lit the sky like a second sunrise. The Empire fleet began to scatter, but the Imperial flagship stayed. It was 3 times bigger than the others, black and silver with a burning red crest across its hull. From its bridge, the fleet commander watched with cold fury as his ships fell one by one. "Bring out the Titan cannon," he ordered. Panels slid open on the flagship side, revealing a massive weapon glowing with red fire. Ethan saw it on the radar. "That thing looks bad," he said quickly. Lyra stared at it, her father's words echoing in her memory. "The lion's heart will protect you, but only if you fight without fear." She tightened her grip on the controls. The Titan cannon fired. A beam of red energy, thick as a mountain, shot toward them, splitting the darkness in half. Lyra didn't move the ship away. Instead, she pressed the lion's heart command again. The warship's shields flared bright blue. The beam hit and vanished, like water against stone. The energy broke apart, scattered into harmless light. Then the warship struck back. Its main cannon charged with power so bright it hurt to look at. Lyra locked on the Imperial flagship. Her voice was steady now. "For my father," she whispered. The cannon fired. A single beam of blue fire tore through the flagship's shields. Its hull, its engines, everything. The Empire's pride, its hunter, its terror, split apart in silence before exploding into a storm of flames. The rest of the fleet broke instantly. The surviving ships fled into hyperspace, leaving behind burning wreckage and silence. For a long moment, the control deck was quiet. Only the hum of the engines and the fading glow of weapons filled the air. Ethan let out a long breath. We won." Lyra stood very still, her hands on the controls, eyes shining with both relief and something deeper, like the weight of years finally lifted. The warship floated among the stars, victorious but scarred, its lights dimming slowly as if falling back into sleep. Ethan looked at her. "What now? The Empire won't forget this." Lyra turned toward him, her face calm for the first time since he had met her. "Then we don't hide anymore," she said softly. "My father built this ship to protect people, not just to run. If the Empire comes again, we fight." Ethan stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something much bigger. Far across the galaxy, messages already spread. Rumors of Kalen's daughter, of a rebel warship risen from the ashes, of the Empire defeated in battle for the first time in years. And in the dark heart of the Empire itself, the rulers watched, planning their next move. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun.